From my understanding, some of the campaign was pushing positive narratives about you. Why do you think that China, the PRC, seems to like you? Why are they praising you?
I have absolutely no idea, and I have absolutely no idea, and I think I'll leave it at that.
Hi, Jared Yeager here with the Western Standard. So yesterday at your rally, you said Pierre Poilievre's plan is to, quote, divide and be conquered. As of now, Canada is reliant on the U.S. to get our own oil from one side of the country to the other. By not repealing Bill C-69 and allowing Quebec to veto a pipeline across Canada, are you not yourself setting up Canada to be divided and conquered?
YouTube, what's up? It's Canuk.News coming to you today. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We're going to be looking at a couple of clips from the Angus Institute, as well as we're going to be hearing from the president of the Angus Reid Institute about what her projections are on the polls and if voters are actually going to vote and turn up compared to Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP votes. As well as we're going to look over a couple of clips from Mark Carney, who can't seem to figure out what his actual role is and if he's actually a prime minister, a politician, or a businessman. Let's get into it.
So yesterday at your rally, you said Pierre Poilievre's plan is to, quote, divide and be conquered. As of now, Canada is reliant on the U.S. to get our own oil from one side of the country to the other. By not repealing Bill C-69 and allowing Quebec to veto a pipeline across Canada, are you not yourself setting up Canada to be divided and conquered?
Absolutely not. In fact, in the premise of your question, you answer it. But if we are going to build big energy infrastructure in this country, there is a we in that. It is not imposed. It is not imposed by the federal government. It's not imposed by an opposition politician. It's not imposed by a company. It requires the support of, in the example you gave, in Energy East of Quebec, the other provinces that are affected. It requires the support, the free, prior, and informed consent of First Nations. So that's the exact opposite, which is that coming together to build. Now, what I've proposed, both at the First Minister's level and more broadly, is that we as a country use this crisis to identify those projects of national interest. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that, okay? Or your colleagues do. I'm a politician. I go to events where there are hundreds and thousands over the course of a day of different people there.
The next day.
Well, let me say a couple of things. First, I'm not a career politician. I'm a pragmatist. I'm here to get things done.
I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, hey, Canuck, I've already seen this clip before. Well, I've got a surprise for you. That clip is actually from this week. He said it again. He said it 2 weeks ago in a clip that he doesn't know what he is. He keeps saying, I'm not a politician, but in the next city or the next province over, he'll say, I'm a politician. Like, you can't make this up. And I really, really don't understand Liberals when they believe that he's actually telling the truth. That they really believe that this man is going to save Canada. He's going to be the best person with business. Do you understand that this man is not a politician, meaning he is a businessman, just like how you guys say you hate Donald Trump so much, but isn't Donald Trump a businessman first? Didn't Donald Trump endorse Mark Carney, two businessmen? So if there's anybody who's closest to Donald Trump, it would have to be Carbon Tax Carney. Now we're going to slide right into another clip because this is just a wake-up call to all the protesters and people out there who believe that freedom of speech also doesn't include being disrespectful. And there's not just the youth that have had enough. It's also older people in older generations who are just sick and tired. And I'm not saying that this clip is right or the man is right, but this did happen during a ceremony somewhere. And this is not even in Canada, but it's just to show you the state of the world and what people are just fed up of seeing and hearing.
Protests gone wrong.
What is the five fingers say to the face?
What?
Slap!
Now, I'm not justifying this in any which manner or form of any type to say that this is right. I'm just stating out that protesting has gotten out of hand to the point where people's emotions are causing them to do impulsive reactions to things that they believe to be disrespectful or things that are disrupting their peace in their life. But ultimately, the woman was all right, and she did say that she was not going to pursue charges, and the elder gentleman did apologize, saying that he described his behavior as very rash and impulsive, and he said he was upset because the woman was rudely interrupting the speakers. Now, I don't believe that that's how you address someone if you feel like they're rudely interrupting, but this is just a warning and an awareness to people that things are getting out of hand and people are starting to react. Let's hear from the president of Angus Reid Institute on her projections of the polls and what she believes will happen on election day, if voters will actually show up for the Liberals or if they're going to show up more or less for the Conservatives.
Of 46% of Canadians, Conservatives the support of 36 and the NDP 7. And when you look at the three biggest provinces with the most seats available, while Liberals have a double-digit lead over Conservatives in BC, Ontario and Quebec, and in Quebec, a 7-point lead over the Bloc Québécois. Now, this lead also carries over in the major city centres of Vancouver, Montreal and the Greater Toronto area. Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. I spoke to her about these numbers earlier today. Of 46% of Canadians, Conservatives the support of 36 and the NDP 7. And when you look at the three biggest provinces with the most seats available, while Liberals have a double-digit lead over Conservatives in BC, Ontario and Quebec, and in Quebec, a 7-point lead over the Bloc Québécois. Now, this lead also carries over in the major city centres of Vancouver, Montreal and the Greater Toronto area. Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. I spoke to her about these numbers earlier today.
The urban voter story is really often the story of these elections. There is no deliverance in Parliament unless you can deliver the GTA, unless you can deliver Metro Vancouver, Greater Montreal, the big urban centres. And it's not just the cities, because in many cases you're dealing with regions and collections of cities. And Michael, let's just talk about how much things have changed in the last 4 months. End of December last year, you had the Conservatives leading, in some cases 2-1 or more than 2-1 over the Liberals in those urban areas. And so when you're in that strong of a position, knowing that the Conservatives have often struggled in urban areas, they were really sitting in places where not only were they going to pick up the suburbs, but they had the potential to break through in the downtown cores of some of these cities. It was really quite unprecedented. 4 months later, the script has entirely been flipped, right? It's just totally topsy-turvy. The Liberals now way ahead, the Conservatives chasing second place, and the NDP. And a big part of this story is the extent to which the NDP vote has really collapsed and has migrated to the Liberals.
Yeah, migrate to the Liberals. And when you look at those, the city numbers alone, it's staggering. And in the Toronto case, because there's always the two scenarios of Toronto, the 416, the city itself, and the surrounding 905. But, you know, how committed are Liberal voters, though? Because those numbers, again, if you're a Liberal, you're encouraged by that. But, you know, we've seen Pierre Poilievre be able to draw thousands of people to his rally. So clearly there's a commitment to that camp. Can the Liberals say the same?
The Conservative base is so motivated, so enthusiastic, and so committed not only to Pierre Poilievre as leader. They really like their leader, but they're also committed to change. To them, the prospect of a fourth Liberal term is anathema, right? Like, they cannot stand this idea. So if it was, I like to joke, if it was legal for them to vote twice, they would do it, right? Like, they would vote as many times as they legally could. With the Liberals, it's a tale of two stories here. There's a good news story and a bad news story. The good news story is that 60% of would-be Liberal voters now say that they are committed in their vote, and that represents an increasing trend. It's trending in the right direction. At the beginning of March, that number was only about 40%. Then it moved to 50%. Now it's at 60%. The Liberals are going to be looking to continue to try to convert that vote. The problem, of course, is that means that nearly 2 in 5 of their voters are not fully locked in and committed. And that could go a couple of different ways on the party. They could find that they start to lose some of those voters back. There's an inevitability factor. If people really believe that the Liberals have this locked, they may feel more emboldened to vote their conscience rather than vote strategically. There's a lot of people who just might not show up to vote. You know, we have to figure out what the flaky factor is with some of these uncommitted voters. So those are two of the pieces that now we have to start parsing, not just who's voting for whom, but who's actually going to vote.
And you heard it. Who is going to vote? And I hope it will be you. I know I'm going to be voting April 28th, 2025. It is fastly approaching. Please, 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 Canada, let's bring it home. Let's get this election over with. And let's get back to building back to being Canadian. If you could, please hit me with that HBO special, with that help a brother out, with that like, that subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. I'm out.